What's going on about this Afro think tank? Today I want to talk about how Kenya is offering no visa for the African diaspora, for African Americans and various other Africans. And how he said out his own mouth, he said this is home. He said Kenya, everybody knows Kenya is the place where humanity started, right? So technically, Kenya is home to everybody, right? But we know he's talking to us. An African president, a pan-African president is telling his African diaspora children to come home. I want you to think about that for a minute. I'm a pan-African, right? And in America, we got a lot of people who are against pan-Africans. They think that we're some sort of tiny little cult, some tiny little group who have lofty ideas of some grand unification of all black people under one umbrella, right? That's what they think, right? They don't understand that it's not one umbrella. There's thousands of umbrellas that's working together to keep everybody dry, all right? And they don't understand how big Pan-Africanism is. They don't understand how global Pan-African is. You see groups, right? Groups, grassroots groups, all right? I'm going to say like ADOS, Freedmen, SBA. We're going to call those grassroots, right? Those are groups that have boiled up, right, from the ground, whether you believe it or not. It boiled up from the ground to try to manifest this faith, to create a sense of unification amongst its particular people, right? You know, against for the tribe of the African American particular group of Africans, right? Which is really nothing wrong with that, you know, minus the xenophobia. You get rid of the xenophobia, there's nothing wrong with it. Everybody doesn't agree with the names because it doesn't sound as cool. You know, black people, we like cool names, you know. And ADOS, you know, American descendant of slaves, even though factually it's factual. Actually, no, it's not. No, sorry. I think ADOS, American descendants of enslaved. I don't think it's actually American descendant of slaves because we were never slaves. We were enslaved. We were never slaves. Let's get this through it. Let's all just put that in their heads. African people were never slaves. We've always just been Africans enslaved. Okay? So let's not associate ourselves with a slave, but we were enslaved. It was something that happened to us. It wasn't something that we became. It wasn't a title we took upon, right? So, you know, so you have all these groups, right? ADOS and what's the new one? Foundational Black American. Problem with that takes us away from Africa. Foundational black, put black in the middle. Black actually means African for us, for the world. Black means you're from Africa. So foundational Black American. We should probably change that to foundational freaking FBA. What is it? Foundational Black African. That's what we really should start saying that. Foundational Black African. That's what the hell your ass is. A foundational Black American African who lives in and created and built America. How about that? But anyway, you know, I'm just teasing a little bit. But we have that name, right? That's the tribe of African Americans, right? ADO. We got freedmen, right? Which is the original, you know, freedmen, men who were freed, or men who were free and wasn't involved in slavery, men who were enslaved and became free. Basically, all of us, we're the after effects of what happened to us, groups, right? As an American tribe. And a lot of people from these particular groups and others, they say, why didn't the Africans come to save us? They didn't want to come and get us, blah, 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 right? And some even say, where are the ships? Where are the ships? Well, ask yourself this. You say, where are the slave ships? You do know it's made of wood, right? We all graduated. We all kind of finished high school, hopefully. And we do know what happens with wood over time, right? But you can ask yourself, where are the ships that brought the white people over? Where are the wooden ships the pirates was on? Where are all the other wooden ships, right? Wooden ships, see, back then, the ships were reused for material to build. So they would take a ship, decommission the ship once it's, you know, had its use, and they would break it apart and build houses with it, structures. Because wood is a commodity, especially finely bent, finely crafted wood. And the ship usually has finely crafted wood. That's perfect for building a cabin, a house, an office, or whatever when it's being decommissioned. That's what happened to the ships. I mean, that's an easily explainable way thing. But they always also, and another thing, the Africans didn't know where we were. They knew that we were getting on ships. They didn't know where they took us, right? And they were dealing with colonialism while we were dealing with the enslavement of ourselves. We were all dealing with the same people, just on different plots of land, you understand? Right? And we're all kind of getting out. We think about this, you know, because we always say like 500 years, 500 years ago, right? To make it seem like it happened so long ago. And Europeans who would like for us to think that way, you know, usually they're of the conservative Republican variety, right? Or the conservative Democratic variety, because, you know, I know people don't know, but they do exist, right? Conservative Democrats. They would have you believe that it was such a long ago, let it go, right? Even though they religiously reenact their war that they had with each other, the white people had reenact their war every year. They put on uniforms. They'll go out there and reenact the entire war, even from the point of camping outside overnight, eating the same way they eat back then. I mean, they do it all shebang. They got the uniforms, the food. They stress out. They battle. They do it all on both sides now, Confederate and Republic. So and proudly on both sides, together in unison, as that's like might be the most unified American activity amongst European Americans is to reenact that damn war, right? Every goddamn year, religiously to the T. All right. So, you know, when it comes to memorizing something, remembering, you know, events and stuff, is important that, you know, we understand that there are different groups out there trying to hold on to the past for a reason. I don't know what their reason is, but for holding on to that, but they just can't seem to get over it, you know, obviously. But they can't tell us not to forget. They can't tell us, oh, it was 100 years ago. No, it was 100-something years ago. It ended 100-something years ago. It ended in your grandmama's time. Your grandmama, right? Let's say if your grandmama about 70, 80, right? And if her grandmama was 70 or 80, her grandmama remembers either being a slave or that her parents were slaves. It just ended, you guys. Remember, they go out and practice the Civil War and they know that just ended. That just ended. It just ended. The 1800s is not that long ago. All right, all this happened in late 1800s. That was not that long ago. The 19th century just ended. Okay, I remember the 19th century. All right, y'all remember the 19th century? Remember the 19th century? So it didn't end 500 years. It started 500 years ago. Now, if you think about that, it started. Not that it ended or it was 500 years. It started 500 years ago. Now, from that point, think about all the way up to how it just ended. That's how they don't want you to think about it, right? But despite all that, you know, so now that both the tribes of those kingdoms who are over here displaced, they're getting ourselves together, we're inventing things, we're building things, we're still rising. We've always been rising. No matter what's done to us, we've always been rising, right? And in the continent, same thing, they've been rising. No matter what's done to them, stopping us from rising is something Europeans have been ineffective of doing. They've slowed us down. They set us back a little bit, but they have never stopped us from rising. Never stopped us from rising. It's just slowed us down. That's it. Or if they did, we are like a leaf being manipulated, like a bonsai. We're going this way, but we're still growing. We need to just redirect ourselves that way, right? Which we're attempting to do now. But now the big thing about the Africans, they don't practice pan-Africanism. This is the excuse a lot of former pan-Africans make, and a lot of people who weren't pan-Africans, people who don't understand pan-Africanism, and people who don't understand how massive pan-African it is. The presidents of countries are pan-African. The Kenyan president is a pan-African. He says the word pan-African. We have a pan-African Congress. Maybe I need to start doing videos on the pan-African Congress to educate even those who are calling themselves pan-African who don't even know about the pan-African Congress. But I think I will start doing that. But we have a Congress. It's an government. It's an organization. It's a nationwide, international movement, pan-Africanism. I'm just a dude on YouTube who calls himself pan-African, who practice and is attracted to those ideals. But there are leaders in charge of countries that are making change based around the idea of pan-Africanism. And the Kenyan president is one of them. The Ghanaian president is one of them, right? We just need other presidents. The Rwanda president is one of them, right? We just need the South African president. I think he might be one of them. You know, they got their own thing done. I think he might be one of them, right? We know EFF is one of them, and that's one of the biggest, most emerging, most important parties in Africa as a whole, but obviously specifically South Africa. So Pan-Africanism is moving along, and it's growing despite what you may personally think in your head because of a YouTube video or some people who are in opposition to it. Whoever is in opposition to Pan-Africanism is against black people. Do you understand? You have to be against black people worldwide to be against Pan-Africanism, because that's what Pan, it means the world. I can almost, instead of saying I'm Pan-African, I can say I'm a global African. I can say that. I can say I'm an international African. It's interchangeable. Pan-African, international African, global African. You see how it sounds? That's what it is. And as you can see, there are presidents that understand that value. And you may get some detractors because you got contrarians, right? We got a lot of contrarians. They will argue anything, right? They will find something to be like, and then reframe the argument just so they can argue with it, because they can't argue or talk about the point. But you'll have some people say, well, they just want our money. Everything is transactional. So even if that's the case, there's nothing wrong with that. They want our money. We want their money. They want us as brothers and sisters. We want them as brothers and sisters. Yes. Come with our resources and their resources combined, we can defeat our common enemy. We can solve our common problems. It just makes sense. It's very simple. Some of us, we think being intelligent is to overthink and overanalyze, right? There is a fine level of overthinking and overanalyze. This is very simple. There are black leaders in Africa who are in positions of great power, who are telling his people to come home, invest, build, use your energy and your forces with Africans. Build African, buy African, sell African, hang out with and socialize with African. If you got a problem, let it be an African problem. If you got drama, let it be an African drama. Just let it be within the house of African, within your family of Africans, and it'll be better. I'd rather have issues with my African government. I'd rather have issues with my state, local, and African government. I'd rather have drama with my African Social Security office. I'd rather have trouble with my African Department of Motor Vehicles than have issues with other people and their foreign cultural issues and me be attached to it. I'd much rather at least be African. At the end of the day, I prefer my problems to be from an African than to be from anybody else if I'm going to have some problems. At least I can deal with that. At least it's more familiar to me. At least I know there's a cultural mechanism in which I can handle the situation and not have to handle it in the way the white Western Europeans handle all their situations. Death and destruction. And total annihilation and burnt scorched earth tactics. And deceit, nasty, conniving, European connivingness. At least I wouldn't have to deal with that. I'll have to deal with our own black snake-like antics and our own little tricks and stuff like that. I'll have to deal with that. But I'd much rather deal with that as an African than deal with this if I don't have to. So, yes, the Kenyan president is another example of continental Africans telling us to come home. Continental Africans saying, family, come home. And how many, let me ask you a question. For you black people who like to travel. We all know the places that we go around the world, minus some countries like maybe the Philippines and certain Southeast Asian countries and the Pacific Islands, minus some of those countries. You know, most places we go, we're not very welcome. It's actually a hostile environment. When we go anywhere, we're not even scared, right? But for the first time in recent in our modern history of being over here, we have countries asking us to come home. We have countries asking us to visit. We have countries saying, hey, you over there, we want you to come here. We value you. You'll be safe here. You have a good time here. Come here. Come here. Come here. We love you. We're arms open. For the first time, no other country does that. We know those other countries don't want us there. Yet we go. They go shop in their stores because we see value in their countries. For some reason. We see value in the countries that they built up off our backs. We go to their countries to enjoy the fruits of our labor in their countries. I mean, think about it. But we have countries now that are in Africa, big, massive countries, bigger than all these other countries you like to go to, with land and beauty, a beauty you can't even imagine the beauty, the amount of beauty that just so happens to belong to you as a black person, and the people want you to come, and they won't be jealous of you when you get there. They won't be going like this at the door trying to keep you African Americans out, keep you African Caribbeans out, keep you African Latinos out. They won't be doing that. No, they would tell you to come on in. Come on in. That's different, right? And I want you guys to think about that, all right? So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm just saying, yo, Pan-African is literally the only way. It's the biggest institution in the world looking to reconnect black people economically and socially. And I implore you guys, if you don't consider yourself a Pan-African, you should. If you love and care and you want the unification, despite the Negroes around you, despite the Negroes on the internet sowing their divisionist tactics, despite the snakes in our grass, despite the spies and the wolves in our midst that look like us, despite that, if you want Pan-Africanism and you truly want us to unify, despite all of that, then that's what you should be. You should be in a Pan-African, because this is the only thing that's going to get us to where we want to go. Okay? That's all I got to say for now, guys. Afro Think Tank, learn something, teach them. I'm out.